Today, we're diving into 5 shocking facts about slavery that almost no one knows. Facts that challenge the official narrative and reveal a side of history they'd rather keep buried. Number 1. Did you know that every living US president, including Obama, has a slave-owning ancestor except Donald Trump? Reuters genealogy research found that Biden, Obama, Bush, Clinton, and Carter all trace part of their family trees back to American slaveholders from the 1700s or 1800s. But Donald Trump is the only living president with no known slave-owning ancestors. His family immigrated to the United States after slavery was abolished, from Germany on his father's side and Scotland on his mother's side. Whatever you think of Trump, that makes his ancestry unique in presidential history. Number 2. Here's a shocking truth most people never hear. The last people to legally own slaves in the United States weren't white Southerners. They were Native American tribes. And this might surprise you because Native Americans are often portrayed as morally pure, peaceful victims of history. But the reality is far more complicated. Many Native nations practiced slavery, and many fought for the Confederacy during the Civil War. Several of the 5 civilized tribes, the Cherokee, Choctaw, Chickasaw, Creek, and Seminole, enslaved African Americans before and during the war. This happened in part because U.S. officials pushed these tribes to adopt American-style farming, wealth systems, and yes, chattel slavery. When the Civil War broke out, the story took an even darker turn. Many of these same tribes sided with the South. They signed treaties with the Confederacy, and thousands of Native soldiers fought under the Confederate flag. Why? Because after decades of broken promises, forced removals, and land theft by the U.S. government, the South offered them something Washington never had: autonomy and protection. And here's the final twist. The very last Confederate general to surrender wasn't Robert E. Lee. It was a Cherokee leader named Stand Watie. He didn't lay down his weapons until June 23, 1865, long after the rest of the country had already declared the war over. Native Americans fighting for the South. Native Americans holding the last legal slaves in America. History isn't simple, and it isn't always what we're taught. Number 3, did you know the United States was not the main destination for enslaved Africans? Here is the shocking truth. Brazil imported over 4.8 million enslaved Africans. That is 5 times more than the United States, which received only about 400,000. For more than 3 centuries, Brazil was the largest importer of enslaved Africans in the world. The country built plantations, mining operations, and entire regional economies on enslaved labor. Brazil was also the last country in the Americas to abolish slavery in 1888. That was only about 135 years ago. Because so many Africans were forced into Brazil, the population today is one of the most mixed and diverse on Earth. More than 50% of Brazilians have African ancestry, even many who do not appear black by United States racial standards. So when you think about the African diaspora, remember this: Brazil, not the United States, was the true epicenter, and its culture, music, food, and people still reflect that history today. Number 4, 25 to 35% of Americans today are descended from slave owners. This is how many current Americans benefited from slavery, and the math to back it up. In 1860, right before the Civil War, about 25% of white Southern households owned slaves. That equals roughly 1 to 1.2 million people who lived in slave-owning families. Now here's where the numbers get big. A person who lived in the mid-1800s typically has around 1,000 living descendants today because every generation multiplies. 2 parents become 4 grandparents, then 16 great-grandparents, and so on. So if you take 1.2 million slave owners and multiply by 1,000 descendants each, you get about 1.2 billion descendant links spread through today's population. But family trees overlap a lot. Many Americans share the same ancestors, so that 1.2 billion doesn't equal 1.2 billion unique people. After adjusting for that overlap, population researchers estimate that around 25 to 35% of Americans alive today are descended from at least one slave owner. That's roughly 1 in 3 people. And that includes many white Americans and even a significant number of Black Americans whose white ancestors were slaveholders. So the legacy of slavery isn't ancient history. It's literally in millions of Americans' family trees today. Number 5. 50 million people are enslaved today in 2025. Not in history books. Right now. And almost no one is talking about it. Forced labor traps more than 28 million people. They work in factories, mines, farms, and fishing fleets. Many have their passports taken. Many are threatened. Some work 16-hour days with no freedom to leave. Products we use every day may come from people who are not allowed to walk away. Over 22 million people are living in forced marriages. Many are girls married off to settle debts or traded like property. It is hidden inside homes, but it is one of the largest forms of slavery on Earth. Human trafficking is a global industry worth over $150 billion a year. People are kidnapped or deceived, moved across borders and sold for sex, forced labor, or criminal exploitation. In parts of West Africa and the Sahel, descent-based slavery still exists. Families are born into slave status and remain tied to the families who claim to own them. Even though it is illegal, people are still inherited or forced to work because of their bloodline. And then there is state-imposed forced labor. Governments that punish or control populations by forcing them to work, sometimes in brutal conditions, with no possibility of escape. Slavery did not end. It evolved. If you want this story told louder, share this message. The world cannot fix what it refuses to see. At Inconvenient History, we are bringing the facts to light, not just what fits the mainstream media narrative. Subscribe for more.